Hey guys, tonight we follow the slow, honey-dipped unraveling of a woman who dreamed far beyond her means and destroyed anyone who stood in the way of her fantasy. You'll slip into her worn-out shoes, feel the weight of humid Alabama nights, and trace every false smile that built her new life. But be warned, you probably won't survive this kind of ambition. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world we're all falling asleep together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge barefoot down a gravel road, red clay clinging to your toes, sweat clinging to your collarbone. The mailbox at the end of the long driveway hasn't seen anything hopeful in weeks. Your family trailer creaks when the wind gets too aggressive. You grew up with the smell of hot dogs for breakfast, and the sound of overdue notices flapping like flags against the screen door. But even then, you knew you didn't belong in all that rust and rot. At 9 years old, you started speaking like someone from the next state over. At 12, you taught yourself how to write cursive signatures like the ones on law firm billboards. And by 16, you were swiping old issues of Town and Country from the dentist's waiting room and tracing pearls and smiles with your finger like they were blueprints. You tell yourself it isn't lying, it's just editing. By 19, you're working at a gas station off Route 84, filling up Suburbans for church ladies who don't look you in the eye. One of them forgets her receipt. You see her name, Margaret Harrington, and recognize the address instantly. The Harringtons practically built this town. The manor on the hill, the gardens that bloom like they've been bribed, the tennis courts no one uses because they're just for show. You file the name away. Not yet, but soon. When your mother dies unexpectedly in 1998, you feel something strange, not grief, exactly relief. She was a chain-smoking waitress with a 5th grade education and a habit of blaming you for every bad man she ever let in the house. She left behind 3 things: a half-used bottle of drugstore perfume, a box of stolen motel towels, and a birth certificate with your name on it. And suddenly, you're free, you dye your hair. A cooler blonde, not platinum, not trashy, classy. You file fake FAFSA paperwork and enroll in a 2-year community college where no one asks too many questions. Then, using the computers in the student lounge, you learn how to edit PDFs. It's 2001. The internet is clunky, but oh so forgiving. You craft a Stanford master's degree in psychology, bold font, elegant layout, gold seal. You stare at it for a full minute. It looks real. A mainstream fact. Stanford really did update their degree design in 2000, adding a watermark and shifting the Latin text slightly. You do not know that. Fringe tidbit. You once read in a tabloid that some heiress faked her way through 3 Ivy Leagues by smiling confidently. You believe it completely. Historians still argue whether the early 2000s were the golden age of forgery or just the blind spot of institutional trust. Either way, you slide your fake degree into a manila envelope and begin mailing out resumes. You list internships you never had, programs you never heard of, and honors you couldn't pronounce. But it works. You land job interviews. 1, 2, 4 in a month. You bomb them all. Turns out, it's one thing to look smart on paper. It's another to answer basic questions about graduate research without sounding like you confused Freud with fraud. So you shift strategies. You don't need a job. You need a husband. You put on your best TJ Maxx imitation of a Diane von Furstenberg wrap dress, head to a charity gala with a borrowed invitation, and flash your Stanford smile at the first man who doesn't wear cologne like a punishment. His name is Eric Harrington, and he is perfect. 32, a little dull, and absolutely dazzled by your work with at-risk youth. He tells you about his mother, Margaret, how she volunteers at the museum and runs the garden club. You smile like you care. You ask about his dog, his boat, his childhood summer trips. You nod when he mentions rowing at Yale, even though you think sculling sounds like an injury. He offers you a drink, You accept. You touch his arm, he blushes. It's easy. By the third date, you've met his friends. By the seventh, you've met his dog. And by the fourth month, he's showing you the family estate marble floors, antique clocks that chime just off tempo, and a dining room table longer than most rental agreements. You keep your heels on the whole time, even when they hurt. There's a moment standing in the guest powder room, staring at the gilded faucets when it hits you. You made it. You, Jenna Carter from Chilton Hollow, whose prom dress was held together by safety pins and prayer, now eats shrimp cocktail. In a house with 3 dishwashers, you don't belong here, but that's the beauty of a good lie. It only has to be believed. You sit at the long, polished dinner table like you've done it your whole life, nodding along as Eric's mother, Margaret, launches into a lecture about the virtues of art patronage. Across from her, your wine glass stays just full enough. Never empty, never gulped. You've practiced this balance in the mirror. Wide eyes, soft smile. Fork at a diagonal, posture like a boarding school memoir. Margaret is all cashmere and coral lipstick. She says things like, "We believe in legacy, and what did your father do again, dear?" with the same tone someone might use to say, "I smell mold." You respond the way you always do. Half-truths sanded smooth with flattery. "He was in education," you say. Margaret squints. "A teacher." You smile. Close. And there it is, the twitch of suspicion, the flicker of disapproval she tries to hide with a sip of Riesling. Still, you marry Eric in May 2002 under a lattice of peonies in the Harrington Garden. You wear a $12,000 gown you pretend not to recognize the price of. You tell reporters from the Montgomery Ledger that you and Eric met through mutual philanthropic work. The lie is so well rehearsed, it almost feels true. But Margaret, she never fully buys it. Not the degree, not your social polish, not the story about leading a Stanford study on rural education disparities, which, in hindsight, sounds more like a policy paper than a memory. She starts dropping hints, gentle ones. At first, there's a wonderful opening at the Children's Hospital. You'd be perfect for it. I ran into a former Stanford alum last week, maybe you know her. And then, we all work in this family. Jenna, it's what keeps us grounded. You laugh them off. You say you're exploring options. You say you're waiting for the right position. You even schedule a few interviews and make up excuses for why they weren't the right fit. But you know it's only a matter of time. You've lied your way into the Harrington estate, but the walls are closing in. The family is built on legacies. Yours is built on a PDF. Here's a fun fact. Forged diplomas were such a booming industry in the early 2000s that entire diploma mills were set up with functioning websites, chat support, and deans who'd send you fake transcripts via fax. You briefly consider ordering a backup degree, but fear it would only draw more attention. Fringe tidbit. There's a rumor that Margaret once fired a maid for over-polishing the silver. You believe it. The woman once frowned at you for cutting cheese into uneven cubes. Historians still argue whether the early elite social circles in the South valued education or merely the appearance of it. You bet your whole life on the latter, but Margaret is the kind who wants both. Then one morning in early spring, she invites you to tea, not Eric, not the family, just the two of you. The invitation is handwritten on cream stationery and smells faintly of rosewater and old money. You consider pretending to be sick, but that would only make things worse. You arrive at the sunroom promptly at 10, dressed in soft blues and pearls, modest but tasteful, like a senator's wife. Margaret greets you with a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. The tea is already steeped, Earl Grey, her favorite. She pours you a cup, then sits across from you, legs crossed, expression unreadable. "You're such a mystery, Jenna," she says softly. You blink. "Oh, you have so many talents, so much potential. But I wonder why you're not putting them to use." You stir your tea once, twice. "I suppose I'm still figuring out where I belong." Margaret's gaze narrows slightly. "Stanford produces leaders. You must know that." And that's when you realize this is it, the beginning of the end. She's circling, not accusing, not yet, but close, too close. You smile, not wide, not nervous, just enough to keep the temperature steady. "That's true," you say, "but Stanford also taught me patience." Later, you pace the master bathroom for 43 minutes, heart racing. The antique tile echoes each step like a gavel. You open the medicine cabinet. There's nothing useful. You check the pantry, cleaning supplies, nothing more. Then, in the shed behind the guest house, you find it, a small bottle labeled potassium cyanide. You stare at it, then you laugh, almost giddy. Eric's father used it decades ago for pest control deer, rats, squirrels. The bottle's dusty, but still sealed, still potent. You Google the dosage on the office computer. You delete the history. You think, just for a moment, about letting it go, about confessing. But then you remember the smell of that gas station, the screech of your mother's voice, the bone-deep panic of wondering where the next rent check was coming from, and you make your decision. 2 days later, you invite Margaret to tea, the same setting, the same cups, but this time, you brew it yourself. You lace her cup with a whisper of powder just enough. She compliments your earrings. You mention a new charity gala. She lifts the cup, sips, and within 15 minutes, she slumps ever so slightly in her chair, eyes closing gently, like someone easing into a nap. You scream, you call for help. The paramedics arrive in under 10 minutes. They pronounce her dead at the scene. The family physician suspects a stroke. The death certificate confirms it. Margaret Harrington is gone. And you wear black to the funeral, but your lips just for a moment curve upward beneath the veil. You glide through the Harrington estate like someone newly anointed. The matriarch is gone. The air feels easier to breathe. And Eric's sweet, oblivious. Eric is too wrapped up in grief to notice the subtle shifting of power at the dinner table. You speak softly now, with purpose, your voice sliding into the spaces Margaret used to fill. Eric, maybe we should rework the foundation's grant process. Eric, I'd be happy to help host the June fundraiser. Eric, your mother would want us to carry on. And he nods, always nods. You wear black for 2 weeks. After that, soft neutrals, creams, beiges, pale blue. You read somewhere that those colors signal control without intimidation. Jackie Kennedy wore them often. Here's a mainstream fact for you. Jackie O intentionally lowered her voice pitch in public appearances to command more respect. You try that. It works. The neighbors adore you now. You're the composed, tragic daughter-in-law who handled Margaret's passing with dignity. You bring lemon pound cake to church luncheons. You start a small book club. You attend charity auctions and always bid just enough to be remembered. But not too much. Not yet. Because you know the truth. You're only ever one Google search away from collapse. Still, things settle. You and Eric fall into a rhythm that feels almost real. He works late at the family bank. You volunteer at the museum, really just sipping coffee with the bored ladies on the board. You have a shared calendar, a country club membership, matching luggage. It's not happiness, exactly, but it's soft and safe. Until 2008, it starts small, a question, almost harmless. At dinner one night, Richard Harrington. Eric's cousin sets down his fork and says, "So, Jenna, tell me again where in Stanford you studied. Was it Palo Alto or Menlo Park?" Your smile holds, but something in your stomach tightens. "Palo Alto," you say smoothly. "Right on the main campus." He nods, slowly. "Huh, you know, I dated a girl who lived near there. She always said the psych building was cursed. Some story about a bat in the lecture hall." You laugh. "Oh, yeah? That bat? You've never heard of the bat?" You didn't even know Stanford had a separate psych building. But you sell the smile. You always do, except Richard doesn't let it go. The next time you see him, he brings up a professor's name. You fake a nod. Then he invites you to give a talk at his company, just something casual about your Stanford thesis. Your panic blooms like mold. You spend 3 straight nights on Stanford's website, trying to memorize course names, faculty bios, archived newsletters from 2001. You scribble notes, highlight phrases, mimic academic tones. You even download a sample thesis on early childhood behavior from a public database and rehearse lines from it in front of the mirror. Eric doesn't notice, but Cody does. Cody Matthews, another cousin, though not by blood technically. A Harrington through a remarriage, but family enough to be at every Thanksgiving dinner, every funeral, every garden party. He's the one with the lazy drawl and the two blue eyes. The one who once caught you smoking behind the carriage house and didn't tell. The one who brushes your wrist a little too slowly when passing the butter. You think maybe he suspects you, too, but for different reasons. One afternoon, you find him waiting in the library. He looks up from a newspaper, smirks. Stanford girl, huh? You force a laugh, still hung up on that. He shrugs, just saying. You don't talk like them. You tilt your head. What do I talk like? He doesn't answer. Instead, he offers you a drink. Bourbon. You shouldn't, but you do. By the end of the glass, you're standing too close. By the end of the week, he kisses you. You let him. It's not love, not even lust. It's something colder, something strategic. You think, if I keep him interested, he won't dig. You think, if Richard comes asking questions, Cody will lie for me. Historians still argue whether the elite Southern family trees of the early 21st century were twisted by accident or by design. You look around this estate and think, maybe it's both. Fringe tidbit. Cody once claimed he dated a woman who believed mint toothpaste was a government surveillance trick. You laughed, but didn't disagree out loud. Richard starts asking Eric questions now. Was Jenna's program the 2-year track or accelerated? Did she ever publish anything? Eric brushes him off. He's used to his cousin's probing. Always hungry for a scandal. Always chasing conspiracy theories about city council. But you stop sleeping. You take melatonin like candy. You jump at every knock. You snap at the maid for folding towels wrong. The illusion is cracking. And then, one night after dinner, Richard leans over and says, I think we should talk. Just the two of you. You agree. You meet him in the study after the house has gone quiet. He pours himself scotch, but doesn't offer you any. I found something strange. He begins. Stanford has no record of you. You freeze. He continues. I called their registrar. Gave them your graduation year. Your program. Nothing. You keep your expression neutral. Maybe they made a mistake. He raises an eyebrow. They don't usually. You don't reply. Your hands stay folded. Your pulse is a quiet riot under your skin. I don't want to embarrass you, Jenna, he says, but I think Eric deserves the truth. You nod slowly, and then you smile. I agree, you say, but maybe not tonight. He's had a long day. He shrugs. Tomorrow. Then, but tomorrow never comes for Richard. The next morning is clear. Deceptively calm. The windows cast soft, buttery light across the Harrington breakfast room. You set the table as always fine china, peach preserves, pressed linen napkins folded into triangles. It's ritual now, almost comforting. You hum softly under your breath. Chopin, or at least what you think is Chopin. Eric is in the shower. Richard is expected for brunch. And you walk to the medicine cabinet with all the certainty of a surgeon. You've watched Richard for weeks. You know, his blood pressure medication's small, circular tablets in a nondescript orange bottle. You also know that when people trust you, they don't watch you refill things. They don't question why the pills seem a little smoother, a little heavier, a little off. You crush just enough into powder, not enough to raise suspicion on autopsy, just enough to mimic a severe cardiac event. Cyanide is too obvious this time. You need subtlety, precision. You spoon the powder into one of the capsules, carefully removing the original contents, replacing it with your own silent little miracle. You seal it back up, line it with the others, close the bottle. Then you wait. Richard arrives late, looking smug. You serve coffee, bacon, a small fruit salad. He says nothing at first, just watches you, like he's savoring the anticipation. You know, he begins, mid-bite. I've been thinking about Stanford again. You offer a sweet smile, still obsessed. I see. He leans forward. It's not obsession, Jenna. It's protection. I care about this family. I care about Eric. You tilt your head, feigning warmth. And that's why you're threatening his wife. He blinks. You don't let him answer. Instead, you reach across the table, bottle in hand. Don't forget your meds. You purr. We can't have you getting another migraine. He hesitates. You keep your hand extended, smiling. He takes the pill. It's not immediate. That would be too easy. It takes a full 10 minutes. You listen to the clock tick. Tick, tick, tick. And then it happens. He stiffens. His fork clatters to the floor. His hand grips the table edge, knuckles white, and his eyes, those cold, judging eyes, fill with something you've never seen in him before. Fear. He opens his mouth. Nothing comes out. You rush to him. Cry out for Eric. Play the part. You even knock over a chair for effect. Eric stumbles into the room, towel around his waist, panicked. You cradle Richard like a sister-in-law should. I think he's having a heart attack. You gasp. The paramedics arrive. They confirm your story. Massive cardiac event. No prior warning signs. Nothing strange in his system, at least not immediately detectable. The body's natural enzymes begin breaking down the traces before anyone thinks to question it. Eric is devastated. You are perfectly devastated. The family comes together. Old photos are passed around. Memories exchanged. No one mentions his suspicions. No one asks about that conversation in the study. But Cody watches you. He's quieter now, less smirk, more stare. At Richard's funeral, he doesn't approach you, but as you walk to the car, you feel a hand brush your shoulder. You know, he murmurs, you're either the unluckiest woman in Alabama or the most careful. You don't flinch, you don't blink. You turn slowly, lean in, and whisper, maybe I'm both. A fringe tidbit for the evening. There's an old Victorian superstition that 3 sudden deaths in a family signal a cursed woman among them. You wonder, briefly, how far that rumor would carry in a place like Chilton Hollow. Historians still argue whether Southern elite families in the post-2000 era fell from within due to scandal, or simply because they built their empires on secrets too delicate to bear scrutiny. You feel that truth humming under your skin, like a ticking watch under silk. After the funeral, Eric retreats. He spends more time at work, in meetings, at the bank. He says he's processing, but you know he's just trying to make sense of the grief. You let him. You play piano at night, badly, but softly enough that no one corrects you. The household adjusts. Meals are quieter. The cousins more distant, and still Cody hovers. One afternoon, you find a note slipped under your dressing room door. No envelope, no signature, just 5 words. I know what you are. You burn it in the bathroom sink. You tell no one. But you don't sleep for 2 days. You wonder, was it Cody, the maid, a neighbor, that girl who works at the library and always looked at you too long? Or was it just someone guessing? That's the worst part, isn't it? You've spun such a fine, shimmering web that now every gust of wind feels like unraveling. You go through the house, tightening routines. You double lock the study. You start deleting emails twice. You tear up old calendars and flush them, just in case. But the thing about lies, Jenna, they don't die with the people who question them. They linger, like perfume in a dead woman's closet. The days after Richard's funeral settle into a syrupy calm. Too sweet, too slow. You move through the house with careful grace, like someone pretending not to be watched because you are, even if no one says it out loud. The air feels charged, thicker, heavier. Eric still believes in you. That's his gift, or his curse. You've taken to watching him while he sleeps, wondering what part of him is so blindly loyal. Is it love, habit, or just the comfort of a narrative that doesn't require questions? He asks nothing, so you answer nothing. Cody, however, is different. He lingers in doorways now, fiddles with a lighter when you speak, says things like, strange how things keep happening around you while polishing a glass. You ignore him. Mostly. Then one morning, while organizing the library, Margaret's old realm, you come across something odd. Tucked inside a medical encyclopedia, a sticky note. Wrong dose. A chill climbs your spine. It's not your handwriting. It's not Eric's. It's just there. You burn that too. But the fire alarm goes off, and now the maid's asking questions. You lie again. Old love letter. Too embarrassing. She nods but watches you more closely now. You feel it everywhere, eyes, suspicions, the subtle tension that creeps into a room before anyone says a word. You start wondering if you left a fingerprint, a browser tab, a poorly washed spoon. You scrub things twice now, once for show, once for survival. That same week, Cody corners you on the veranda. The azaleas are blooming. The weather is too pretty for this. You ever worry it'll catch up to you? He asks, swirling his drink. You take a long breath. Let the silence settle. No. You say, I'm always ahead of it. He laughs. It's not warm. Later that night, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror. Same perfect hair, same flawless skin. But your eyes? They're different now. Duller. Like windows someone forgot to clean. It's the stress. You tell yourself. But deep down, you know something's shifting. Eric's distant lately, not cold, just far away. He's traveling more, opening new branches of the bank. He leaves behind neat schedules and flowers from hotel lobbies. But the space between you stretches. You try to close it. You surprise him in Atlanta for a weekend. Wear silk. Bring wine. But he seems distracted, sleepy. He tells you it's work. You lie beside him in the hotel bed, watching the red glow of the alarm clock tick toward 3. So, no. And you realize something chilling. You don't trust him anymore either. A mainstream fact to drift on. In 2008, studies showed that nearly 27% of Americans admitted to keeping secrets from their spouse, but no one asked what kind of secrets. Historians still argue whether the collapse of intimacy in upper-class marriages is due to technology, ambition, or simple human boredom. You wonder, could it be fear? Eric kisses your cheek at checkout, calls you darling, but he double-checks his briefcase in a way he didn't used to. Back at the estate, you distract yourself. You reupholster the parlor chairs, reorganize the cellar, host a garden brunch, and pretend not to notice that Cody doesn't RSVP, doesn't call, doesn't show. 3 days later, there's a knock on your door, not the front door, your bedroom. It's Cody. He's been drinking. You can smell it, but his voice is steady. I know what you did, he says. Your pulse skips. He tosses something onto your vanity. A small USB drive. What's that? You ask. He doesn't answer, just walks out. You stare at the flash drive for a long time. Don't touch it. Don't move. Finally, you plug it into your laptop. Just once, just to see, inside, scanned documents, emails, screenshots, a copy of your fake Stanford degree, a time-stamped image of a Google search cyanide dosage in tea. Your hands go cold. Fringe tidbit. The first person to be convicted of murder based on a Google search was in 2008. You remember the headline. You laughed at the time. Now, you aren't laughing. You call Cody that night, no answer. You leave a message. We should talk. No response. And then, one morning, Eric asks you something you haven't heard in months. Did you ever finish that grant proposal for the museum? You blink, smile. I've been busy. He doesn't press, but he watches you over the rim of his coffee mug, like he's seeing you for the first time. You start checking the locks again, triple now. You start checking the tea tins. You stop sleeping. Again. You find a new note on your pillow a week later. You're running out of time. You don't cry. You don't scream. You just sit on the edge of your perfect, silk-sheeted bed and wonder if it's time to disappear. The morning after the note, the sky is overcast, thick with that southern humidity that makes your blouse stick before you've even finished brushing your teeth. You stare at your reflection for a full 5 minutes. There's a slight tremble to your hands now, no matter how still you try to be. You whisper to yourself, hold it together. Then, louder, to the empty room. You're still in control. But are you? The note lingers in your nightstand, tucked beneath a silk scarf, as if silk could smother fear. You've memorized its cheap paper, the slanted handwriting, the absence of punctuation. You replay every moment of the last few weeks, every glance, every brush of tension in the hallway, every time someone entered a room and paused mid-step like they forgot why they were there. You're unraveling. And worse, you're not the only one who knows it. You try to steady yourself with performance. That's always been your weapon. You show up to brunch in pale pink chiffon. You volunteer to host the spring auction. You send handwritten thank you notes with exaggerated loops in the Xian. You bake lemon tarts from scratch twice. Eric notices you're really trying lately. He says, you smile, slow and sweet, just making up for lost time. He leans over and kisses your forehead. But his lips feel uncertain, like he's thinking too much. Cody, meanwhile, is nowhere. No texts, no appearances, not even a smug look from across the garden. You almost miss him, but the fear he left behind stays. One night, while reorganizing the tea cabinet again, you hear the doorbell. It's late. You pause, tea canister in one hand. You walk to the front door slowly. Careful. Through the window, you see a man, neatly dressed, early 50s, thin-rimmed glasses, a folder under one arm. He introduces himself as Nathan Bell, says he's doing some background updates for the museum's donor registry, and would love to clarify a few details about your Stanford credentials. Your heart hammers. You open the door only partway, smile tight. Oh, that must be a mistake. You say, I'm not officially affiliated, just a volunteer. He nods slowly, flips open the folder anyway. Interesting. I was just curious because your name appeared in a grant request that lists you as a consultant under Dr. Jenna Carter Harrington. You freeze. Doctor, a title you never claimed but one others assumed. You never corrected them. That was the whole point. I can double check the records. He offers, just need your graduation year. You smile again. It hurts. Of course. You say, why don't you leave me your card? You close the door before he responds. Lock it. Then lock the second bolt. Then the chain. You don't look through the peephole to see if he's gone. You just stand there, breathing like you've run a marathon. A mainstream fact. In 2008, background checks in non-profit institutions were updated to include degree verification. You hadn't thought about that when you started attaching yourself to charitable boards. Why would you? Everything back then was about perception, not proof. Historians still argue whether the digital age made deception harder or just made mistakes easier to trace. You've decided it's both, and right now, it's closing in. The next morning, Eric is waiting at the kitchen island. He has your phone. His face is unreadable. I saw something. He says, your throat goes dry. He turns the screen around. It's your email one you left open by accident. Or maybe fate. A draft titled Exit Plan. Bullet points. Accounts to close. Money to move. Passports. You'd been dreaming of it, just dreaming. But now it's real. He doesn't yell, doesn't accuse. He just says, are you planning to leave me? You look him in the eyes and lie like it's breathing. No, his expression flickers, just for a second, then he nods. But the silence in the room is brutal. He leaves for work without touching his coffee. You spend the day vacuuming things that don't need to be vacuumed. You rearrange the dining room chairs, then rearrange them again. You light a candle and forget about it until it burns down to waxy nothing. Fringe tidbit for today. Antique wax candles used to be scented with bee's knees extract, not a metaphor, but an actual component of early luxury candles. You consider that as you wipe melted wax off the baseboards. That night, you don't sleep. Again, you lie awake imagining Eric going through drawers, talking to Cody, looking at old calendars and tax documents. You imagine what Nathan Bell found after leaving your doorstep. You imagine your house being searched, piece by piece, secret by secret. And then, sometime around 3:00, something inside you breaks. The fear congeals into something darker. Not panic, not guilt. Resolve. If they're going to push, you're going to shove. You go downstairs, flip through the address book. Cody's number is still there. You don't call, but you do write a letter. Short, just 3 lines. You don't want to do this. I don't bluff. I don't fail. You leave it unsigned. The next day, you hand it to the mail courier with a smile. Just a little note. You say, you wave, close the door, and for the first time in weeks, you almost feel like yourself again. Almost. You wake up to birdsong that feels too cheerful, too oblivious. The kind of sound that belongs to people who still believe life is fair, and breakfast should be enjoyed outdoors. You lie in bed for 10 extra minutes, staring at the ceiling fan as it spins like a slow countdown. The Harrington estate is quiet, too quiet. Eric left early for a conference in Savannah. His note sits on your nightstand, written in his careful, lawyerly print. Back Sunday. Love you, E. You don't know what feels colder, the note or the fact that you double-checked the return flight on his itinerary just to be sure he was really gone. Downstairs, a fresh bouquet of white lilies is sitting in the foyer. No card. You didn't order them. You toss them into the trash. Then you sit on the floor of the walk-in closet and start cataloging your panic. It helps. Somehow, there's comfort in the method. Cody hasn't responded to your letter. Nathan Bell might still be digging. Eric now has one eye open. You clutch a robe around yourself and remember something your mother once said. Years before you cared about matching your nail polish to the season. Everyone's got a secret. Yours just ain't landed yet. It had annoyed you then. It terrifies you now. You walk out into the garden. You need air and a distraction. The kind of distraction that has a pulse. You're halfway through pruning Margaret's overgrown rose bushes when you hear him, still pretending to care about landscaping. You turn. Cody stands just beyond the hedge, arms crossed, sunglasses on even though the sky's overcast. You wipe your hands, nod, still sneaking around like a high schooler. He smirks. You're not that hard to find. A pause. Then, you got my letter. Another pause. He nods. I did. He says, you're right. You don't bluff. That's the problem. You study him. He's wearing the same leather jacket he always wears when he's nervous. You've seen it before at funerals, confrontations, and that one Thanksgiving where Aunt Linda brought a date who looked suspiciously like a bounty hunter. You gonna tell Eric? You ask. No, you raise an eyebrow. But I want something. He adds, of course he does. Fringe tidbit for the day. The phrase hush money comes from 17th century England, where nobles would bribe printing presses to prevent scandalous rumors from becoming pamphlets. You'd make a great baroness, if only the timeline matched. Cody leans in. I want access to the fund. You blink. What fund? He chuckles. Oh, please. The offshore one. The one in Eric's name that suddenly started transferring 5 figures a month after Margaret's stroke. Your mouth goes dry. You underestimated him. You're many things, liar, manipulator, survivor, but you're not reckless. And this is reckless. You think I'd risk that much? You ask? Quietly. I think you already did. He replies, you think about lunging at him with your garden shears, just for a second. But violence is messy. You prefer cleaner exits. Historians still argue whether power shifts in high society happen gradually or all at once. You now know the truth. It's both. You don't realize it's happened until you're standing in your own garden, being blackmailed by the man you once kissed just to shut him up. You nod slowly. Fine. But you get one transfer. That's it. He shrugs. I only need one. He starts to walk away, then pauses. Oh, he says, glancing back. And if anything happens to me, there's a file with dates, names, screenshots. You force a smile. Of course there is. Back inside, you pour yourself tea this time, unsweetened. You sit at the kitchen table and stare out the window. The roses now bent under the weight of coming rain. The estate feels heavier by the hour. You check the security system, reset the passwords. Again, you go through the attic and gather anything that looks like a liability. Old notebooks, expense ledgers, a box of letters you once forged as part of your admissions package for grad school. You burn half of them in the fireplace before you realize the smoke will linger. You stop, douse the flames, hide the rest in a suitcase marked for seasonal clothes. Later that evening, your phone buzzes. A text, unknown number. He's not the only one watching. N.B. Nathan Bell. You close your eyes, breathe, exhale. Your pulse is a slow metronome. You reply, what do you want? He doesn't answer right away, but when he does, it's worse than you expected. A meeting. Sunday. Before Eric returns. Sunday arrives like a blade behind silk. The air is thick, swollen with humidity. The sky the color of dishwater. You dress in gray slacks and a cream blouse, professional, forgettable, untouchable. Your perfume is faint. Your lipstick, neutral. You look like someone who gives charity lectures at the Botanical Society. That's the point. You meet Nathan Bell at a small cafe 2 towns over. Neutral territory. Public. Predictable. No risk of running into neighbors or chatty church ladies who would ask why you're here without your husband. He's already seated at a corner table. Black coffee. No cream. A notebook. A small manila envelope. You slide into the seat across from him. Mrs. Harrington. He greets, all politeness and clean syllables. You respond with a nod, Mr. Bell, for a few beats. Neither of you speaks, just the hiss of the espresso machine in the background, the quiet clinking of teaspoons, and tired waitresses refilling mugs. Then, I ran your Stanford ID through a few systems, he says. Nothing came up. You fold your hands. That's not a surprise. He raises an eyebrow. You lean in slightly. Let's not waste time pretending I'm going to deny it. His expression doesn't change, but something in his posture softens. That's the first honest thing I've heard all week. You shrug. Honesty's expensive. He opens the manila envelope and slides a photo across the table. It's a scan of your forged degree. Clean, convincing, deadly. You're not the first to try this, he says, but most don't get as far as you have. Then maybe I'm exceptional. He almost smiles. Maybe. Then he taps the folder. But you understand what happens next, right? You stare at him. Do I look like someone who folds? No, he admits. You look like someone who adjusts. A brief pause. I don't want to ruin you, he says at last, but I do want the truth. You scoff. The truth. That's rich. Let me write the report. He continues, undeterred. You tell me everything, from the start. We redact names. We change timelines. It becomes a case study. Anonymous, but real. You blink. You want me to confess so you can publish it. He nods. This isn't just a job. This is research. You lean back in your chair. Of all the things you expected, blackmail, exposure, arrest, this one wasn't on the list. You think I'm going to sit here and hand you my story on a platter? He smiles. You already started. You look away. A dog barks outside. A baby cries in the corner booth. The world keeps turning. You sip your tea, then set the cup down. Let's say I did tell you everything. You say, "What's to stop you from handing it to the police?" He shrugs. Nothing. Really, except the fact that I don't trust the justice system to do this story justice. Mainstream fact. By 2008, over 60% of investigative journalists admitted to having unreleased material that could incriminate powerful people material. They held back not out of fear, but because the truth had to land right. Fringe tidbit. There's an underground community of archivists who collect almost true stories, not for profit, just to keep the lies from rewriting history. Nathan Bell feels like one of those people. Historians still argue whether exposing a lie is more valuable than understanding why it worked in the first place. You suspect it's both. You reach for the photo, flip it over. Blank. Of course. You're asking me to rip my own mask off. You say softly, I'm asking you to tell the version you can live with. It's an elegant pitch, one you'd use if the roles were reversed, but you don't say yes, not yet. Instead, you stand, I'll think about it. Nathan nods. No pressure, no threats, just those watchful eyes that know too much. You walk out, heels clicking against the tile like a metronome counting down. Back in the car, you don't drive straight home. You go to the cemetery, not to visit Margaret or Richard, but to check something. Their graves are side-by-side polished stone, seasonal flowers, the works. You study the soil, the dates, the symmetry. You crouch, run a finger along the base of Margaret's headstone, and there it is, a thin line, a shift in texture. The stone's been moved recently. Why? You don't know, but it pricks at you like a loose thread. Later that evening, just before Eric's return, you go into the master bathroom and open the old medicine drawer again. You count the pills, all accounted for, except one bottle. It's missing. Not the cyanide that's long gone, but Richard's leftover beta blockers. You had meant to dispose of them, quietly, discreetly. Now, they're gone. You check the security footage. Deleted. You sit on the floor. Pull your knees to your chest. Cody's voice echoes in your memory. If anything happens to me, you whisper into the empty room. Not yet. Please, not yet. The sound of Eric's suitcase wheels rolling over the marble foyer should soothe you. It doesn't. It grates. The steady click-click echoes like a countdown to something you're not ready to name. He enters the kitchen a little sunburned, a little tired, and holding a tote bag full of hotel chocolates and conference swag. Hey, babe. You smile. Tight. How was Savannah? He kisses your cheek like a stranger who's been instructed to productive. You hate that word. It means he was busy. Busy doing what? He pours himself a glass of water and asks, without looking at you, did anything happen while I was gone? Your hand freezes mid-wipe over the countertop. You want to say, define anything. Instead, you say, no, everything's fine. He nods, drinks, says nothing more. That night, you lie beside him in bed and listen to the low hum of the ceiling fan, half expecting him to whisper a name. Aim in his sleep. Cody, Nathan, Jenna. But he doesn't. He just breathes. The next morning, he leaves early again, early enough that the maid raises an eyebrow over the breakfast dishes. You wave it off, say something about important meetings. But in your gut, you know better. The house is starting to shift around you. You can feel it, like a stage set slowly being dismantled behind the curtains. The roles you cast for yourself are breaking down wife, daughter-in-law, philanthropist. You're something else now. You're the woman with too many keys and not enough alibis. By midweek, it gets worse. A cousin, Amanda, the chirpy one who runs a yoga studio in town, stops by unannounced. She's carrying a stack of old photos she found while clearing out her mother's attic. You're in a few of these, she beams, holding out a dusty album. Your stomach sinks. You flip through the pages slowly, and there it is, a photo from the rehearsal dinner. You and Margaret, standing too close. You'd forgotten about this one. In the picture, she's mid-sentence, gesturing. But her eyes, they're looking past you, at someone else. And behind her, Richard, holding a glass, watching. Something in his expression flickers. Suspicion, or maybe just discomfort. But you can feel the cold bloom of paranoia in your chest all over again. Amanda chirps on, "God, I miss her. She always said you were full of surprises." You smile. Barely. She had a way with words. Amanda leaves soon after, but the album stays. You tuck it into a drawer you haven't opened in months. One filled with receipts, old invitations, and broken pens. Later that night, as you're brushing your teeth, you glance at the locked drawer under the sink. The one with Richard's remaining medical files, unfiled, unburned. You take them out, flip through them slowly, and there, wedged between hospital visit notes and blood pressure charts, is something new, a sticky note. You stare at it, unsure how it got there. Heart shows stress markers inconsistent with typical cardiac event, possible stimulant interaction. Its initial WR. The family physician. Your jaw tightens. You had counted on him not looking too closely, on everyone trusting the story you told with your wide eyes and shaky voice. Now, there's a ghost in the paperwork. You rip the note up, burn it in the sink. But that's when it hits you. Someone's been in this drawer. Fringe tidbit. In 2007, a Virginia estate scandal revealed that a housekeeper had secretly been photocopying her employer's documents for over 4 years. She didn't do it for blackmail, just curiosity. You're not dealing with curiosity here. You're dealing with evidence. Historians still argue whether justice in private families is ever truly blind or just politely deaf. You now suspect it's neither. It's opportunistic. You find Eric the next morning in his office. He's going through old legal files, but quickly minimizes the screen when you walk in. "Need something?" he asks. You smile. "Just wanted to say good morning." He gestures toward the hallway. "Sorry." Buried in estate paperwork. Uncle Frank's trust is still a mess. You nod. Pretend to believe him. But you know what you saw in email inbox and the subject line. Stanford credentials verification. Request for update. You walk out, calmly, but your heart is clawing against your ribs like a thing trying to escape. That night, you open the liquor cabinet. You don't drink much, not since Margaret, but tonight calls for something sharp. You pour a splash of bourbon, no ice. You stare out the window and whisper, just to hear the sound of your own voice. "Do you want me to burn this house down?" You say it like a prayer, and for the first time, you're not sure who you're asking. You begin to move differently, quieter, slower, like a cat in a house full of rocking chairs. Eric's silence sharpens. His good mornings come late and lukewarm. He checks his phone before kissing you and never quite finishes his coffee anymore. And every time you walk into a room, he seems to already be leaving it. You're not stupid. You know what's happening. He's gathering. Maybe not the whole truth, not yet, but pieces, threads, and you can feel it. He's just waiting for them to knot. One evening, you step outside after dinner, barefoot, glass of wine in hand. The garden is damp with sprinklers, roses hanging low with water and something heavier. Regret, maybe. You sit on the edge of the fountain and remember something Margaret said once casually, like she was commenting on the weather. Secrets are like mildew. You might not smell them at first, but give them time. She wasn't wrong. You swish the wine in your glass, and then you hear it. Voices. Near the pool house? You freeze. Eric's voice soft, edged, and another, familiar. Cody. You move closer, careful not to snap any twigs. "She's cracking," Cody says. "I saw her yesterday just sitting in the kitchen, talking to no one." Eric exhales. "She said she's fine." "She's not." Cody replies, "And I told you weeks ago if she finds out about the report, she'll burn the place to the ground." Your heart turns to ash. The report. What else did she say? Eric asks. A pause. Then, she thinks I'm on her side. You blink. Another pause. "I'm only doing this because it's the only way she'll come clean." Cody continues. "But Eric, you need to prepare yourself. You don't know the half of it." You back away slowly, heart stuttering against your ribs. They've been working together, playing you. This whole time, you drop your wine glass. It shatters on the stones like gunfire. The voices stop. You run, inside, upstairs, into the bathroom. Lock the door. Your breathing is shallow. Your hands won't stop shaking. You stare at yourself in the mirror and say, out loud, "They think I won't fight back. Mainstream fact. A 2008 federal case involving financial fraud was cracked not by the IRS or the FBI, but by a spouse's discreet audio recordings used during divorce mediation. Historians still argue whether betrayal within families collapses dynasties more effectively than public scandal. You're starting to think betrayal is the scandal. Later that night, Eric doesn't mention the broken glass. Neither do you. But he doesn't touch you when he climbs into bed. And you don't close your eyes until long after he starts snoring. The next morning, you rise early. Earlier than usual, you go down to the pool house. It smells like cedar and chlorine, and something synthetic, probably leftover pesticide from before you moved in. You open the storage closet, still there. A half-full bottle of cyanide-laced pest control concentrate. You stare at it for a long time. You won't use it, not yet, maybe not ever. But you leave the closet open when you walk out, just in case someone else decides to come snooping. A few days later, a manila envelope arrives at the door. No return address. Inside, photos, blurry, grainy, but unmistakable. You in the garden with Cody, his hand on your waist. You at the pharmacy. You online. You in your car, stopping at a gas station you don't remember. And one more, you in the cemetery, alone. Kneeling between Margaret and Richard's headstones. The note inside is typed. You are being watched. This ends soon. No signature. You don't cry. You don't scream. You just place the envelope in the fireplace and watch it turn black. The next day, you host a small lunch. Just 6 people, enough for cover, not enough for chaos. Eric is calm. Cody plays his part. The cousins laugh, drink, clink glasses. Like this is still the same estate, the same family, the same unshakable house on the hill. You excuse yourself halfway through dessert. In the hallway, you pause, close your eyes, listen to the muffled voices and clinking silverware. And for the first time in weeks, you smile. Because now you know, they're not trying to expose you, they're trying to break you. You walk upstairs, open your closet, and pull out the old leather-bound journal you've hidden behind the shoebox labeled tax receipts. Inside, everything. Every name, every decision, every pill, every lie. If they want war, they'll get something far worse. Truth. The Stanford envelope arrives a week later, cream-colored, embossed, unrequested. You stare at it as it rests on the kitchen counter, like a ticking clock with no hands. You already know what's inside, a formal invitation. One of those overly polite summons people mistake for flattery. The Stanford Psychology Alumni Reception. Eric leaves it near your teacup, folded open. You going? He asks, not looking at you. You stir your tea. 1, 2, 3 rotations clockwise. I doubt it. You say, too far, too awkward. He nods once. I thought you might want to reconnect. You smile. Thin. I burned that bridge. Remember, he meets your eyes. And for the first time since Richard died, there's something behind his gaze that you can't read. Not concern, not confusion, clarity. He knows. You don't know how much or how long he's known, but it's there now, sitting between you like steam rising off ceramic. You excuse yourself, go upstairs, pretend to organize the linen closet while your hands shake. Later that afternoon, you find an RSVP card has been filled in for you. Yes, by Eric. The handwriting is yours, but it's not your pen. You start to sweat beneath your blouse. That night, you pack a suitcase, not for Stanford, but for war. You call Nathan Bell. He doesn't answer, so you leave a voicemail. You want the truth? You get it when I say so. The next day, you wake to find your flight confirmation in your inbox. You didn't book it, but someone did. First class, direct to California. Someone wants you to show up. Someone wants to watch you fall. Mainstream fact. Stanford's alumni events often go undocumented to protect the privacy of high-profile guests. But you don't care about privacy now, you care about pressure. This is a setup. Fringe tidbit. The Stanford campus was once home to an experimental psychology lab in the 1950s that tested whether lies could be detected through pupil dilation. You're almost impressed by the irony. Historians still argue whether the early 2000s tech boom changed Stanford's soul or simply made its lies more lucrative. Either way, you're walking straight into the belly of it. The morning of the flight, you put on your best performance armor, black slacks, white blouse, vintage scarf, subtle makeup. You board the plane like someone attending their own trial. But when you land at SFO, something unexpected happens. No one greets you. No reporters. No angry administrators. No Nathan Bell. Just a rental car waiting with your name neatly printed on a placard. You drive to the campus. Every step echoes like a dare. Red roofs, long shadows, students with earbuds and laptops, the same cool coastal air you've only ever pretended to remember. You stand in front of the psychology building for a full 2 minutes. Then, with a sharp breath, you enter. Inside, everything is beige and sterile and slightly outdated. The kind of space where secrets are archived, not confessed. You reach the reception desk. Name, the assistant asks. You hesitate. Then answer, Jenna Carter Harrington. She flips through a list. Room 304. Upstairs. You thank her and climb the staircase with legs that barely feel attached to your body. You knock. The door opens. It's not Nathan Bell. It's Eric. You freeze. He steps back. Come in. You don't move. Why? You whisper. He exhales slowly. Because I needed to know if you'd actually come. You laugh once bitter, tight. You flew me across the country for a test. No, he says, voice calm. I flew you here to see what you do when the mask came off. Inside the room, a whiteboard, a single chair, a laptop open to a presentation titled Case Study. The Stanford Widow. You blink. What is this? Eric gestures. You lied to me. You lied to everyone. But what kills me isn't the lie. It's how good you were at maintaining it. You stay silent. He adds, you could have told me anytime. I would have listened. No, you wouldn't have. You say, you would have left. I might still, he replies. Another pause. Then, this isn't about punishment. It's about choice. You stare at the screen again. That awful title. Who else has seen this? Just me. And Cody, you nod. Slowly, and what now? You ask. That depends on you. He slides a thumb drive across the table. Everything Nathan gave me. All of it. You want to take control of your story. Do it now. You hesitate. Reach for the drive. Then stop. What if I don't want to tell the truth? You ask. Eric's eyes are tired, but sharp. Then you've already told it. You pick up the drive. Hold it like a verdict. You don't remember the flight home. You remember boarding and the quiet whoosh of the cabin door closing and the slight nausea that comes with rapid ascent. But the rest, a blur of clouds and dry almonds, and the sound of your own blood in your ears. The thumb drive stays in your coat pocket the entire time. You don't look at it. You don't dare. Eric says nothing on the way back from the airport. The silence between you feels ancient now, like an abandoned language you both used to speak fluently. When the Harrington estate comes into view, white columns glowing in the late afternoon haze, you feel a strange pang in your chest. Not fear, not guilt, something closer to grief. Because this house, this entire beautiful illusion you constructed brick by forged brick, is no longer yours. Not really. Not anymore. Eric parks the car. You coming in? He asks. You nod. Eventually, he doesn't argue, just walks inside, alone. You stay in the car, staring out at the lawn Margaret used to have mowed in perfect diagonals, the rose garden where you buried your panic, the veranda where Cody first touched your hand like it was a dare, and you wonder, what would it feel like to leave this all behind? But you don't. You go inside and find a flash drive waiting for you in the foyer. Not the one Eric gave you, a different one. Wrapped in a ribbon, no note. You carry it into the study and slide it into the laptop without even checking for malware. Because you already know what you're about to see. The first file is a video. Cody filming himself in the pool house. I figured you'd watch this alone. He begins. You always did like to do your unraveling in private. He pours a drink. Neat. This isn't blackmail. He says, it's insurance. For both of us. He sets the glass down. Because here's the thing. Jenna, no one's innocent. Not me. Not you. Not even Golden Boy Eric. Who, by the way, has been using you as cover for his own secrets. You blink. Cody smiles. Oh yeah, you thought he was just passively watching you crumble. No, he's building his own case, his own escape plan. The screen goes black. The next file is a folder of PDFs, bank transfers, property deeds, offshore accounts. Not yours, his, Eric's. You scroll through in disbelief. Transfers in his name to foundations you've never heard of. A property in Belize, another in Portugal. A mainstream fact, in 2008, wealthy Americans began quietly shifting assets offshore during the recession. not just to avoid taxes, but to protect themselves from lawsuits and scandal. The number of private shell companies registered that year broke records. Fringe tidbit. One real estate agent in Lisbon reported that a full third of luxury properties sold that summer were bought by men with wives they never mentioned. Historians still argue whether the collapse of the American dream started with foreclosure or with fear. You now believe it started with exit plans. You sit back in your chair, stunned. Eric's been preparing to leave you. While you were sweating over tea blends and pills and fake degrees, he was laundering his reputation. And maybe, just maybe, waiting for you to take the fall. The third file is a document, text only, typed by Cody. It seems final inventory. The Harrington lie. Below are bullets, cold, factual, unflinching. Jenna Carter forged her Stanford credentials in 2001. Margaret Harrington died in 2000. Jenna served her tea. Richard Harrington died in 2008. Jenna managed his medication. Eric Harrington began offshore transfers in 2000. The Stanford reception was a trap. Cody Matthews is the only one who knows it all. The last line. If you're reading this, it's not too late. Unless it is, you close the laptop. Your hands tremble, your heart races, but your mind, it sharpens. You thought you were the only spider in the web. Turns out, the web was bigger than you realized. Wider, stickier, deadlier. You walk into the kitchen. Eric is stirring tea. Earl Grey, Margaret's favorite. He doesn't look up. You speak calmly. When were you going to tell me? He pauses, then sips. About what? Portugal. A beat. Then, when I was sure you couldn't burn it down, you let out a soft laugh. It's not funny. But what else do you do when the man you outlied, outmaneuvered, outloved, was lying just as hard, just as long? You look at him. He looks at you. And for a brief moment, you both smile. Because now it's war. The private investigator arrives on a Tuesday. He wears corduroy, carries a leather briefcase that creaks when he sets it down. He introduces himself as Mr. Wesley Carr, a name that sounds both fabricated and tired. You serve him coffee anyway. Black. No sugar. Same way Richard used to drink it. He doesn't beat around the bush. I've been hired to investigate inconsistencies in your academic and financial records, he says, flipping open a slim folder with a single silver pen clipped to the top. You smile like it's a social visit. By whom? He doesn't answer. But you know, Eric. Or maybe Cody. Or both. He removes a sheet of paper. This is a copy of your resume from 2002. He says, it lists a graduate degree from Stanford University. He lays another paper beside it. This is an official verification from Stanford stating no such individual graduated under that name or birthday. You glance at both. Sip your tea. Maybe it was an administrative oversight. You offer. Wesley doesn't blink. And your thesis on trauma-induced learning behaviors. You smile again. It was very well received. He lets the silence stretch. Then, there are also discrepancies in your late mother-in-law's medical file. The attending physician's notes list symptoms inconsistent with a typical stroke. Mainstream fact. The autopsy standards in the early 2000s for private family deaths in rural counties were notoriously inconsistent. Many were bypassed entirely if the family physician signed off. Fringe tidbit. In some counties, funeral homes would unofficially correct death certificates based on how well they knew the deceased's family. You once bribed a funeral director with a bottle of Bordeaux and a signed museum poster. Wesley closes the folder. I'd like to ask you some questions. Off the record. You tilt your head. You already are. He leans in. Are you aware your husband has secured a legal safety net through a secondary trust? One that lists you only as a temporary beneficiary. Your heart gives a slow, dark twist. You nod once. I figured. And did you know that a witness, your cousin, Mr. Matthews, has submitted a written affidavit stating he overheard you confess to poisoning Richard Harrington? You blink. Confess. That word doesn't belong to you. You never confessed. You hinted. You manipulated. But you never gave it away. And now Cody is rewriting your role in his script. Did he provide proof? You ask quietly. Not yet. Wesley replies, but he claims to have recordings. You keep your face still. You have no idea if that's true, but it could be. And that's the danger now. Wesley stands. This is your opportunity to clarify the truth before it becomes something you no longer control. You rise with him. Graceful. Controlled. If I wanted the truth told, Mr. Carr, I'd write it myself. He gives a small nod. I believe you might. You walk him to the door. He tips his head politely. You have until the end of the month. After that, my report becomes public. As the door clicks shut, your shoulders slump for exactly 3 seconds. Then you straighten. The time for delay has passed. You call the estate lawyer, schedule a meeting. 2 hours later, you're in his office, flipping through a packet of emergency dissolution clauses. Eric has tied up the estate in multiple layers. You're in all of them, but you're never the primary signatory. You are decorative, a placeholder, a wife on paper, a suspect in motion. You call a second lawyer, out of town. Discreet. You want copies of every real estate document Eric filed. You want notarized records, asset transfers, hidden shell companies, and you want them fast. You don't sleep that night. You open your laptop and begin writing a full confession. Not for Wesley Carr, not even for Eric, but for you. Because if they're going to rewrite your story, you'll make damn sure they don't do it without your voice echoing through every chapter. You title the document, The Porcelain Wife, a Cautionary Tale. You start from the beginning. Dirt roads, red clay, the gas station on Route 84. You write everything. And as you write, something strange happens. You begin to feel lighter, not forgiven, not innocent, but free for now. Because even if Eric walks, even if Cody leaks his fake recordings, even if Wesley publishes his smug little report, you'll have the truth, your version, your rules. You close the laptop just as the sun breaks through the window. Then, slowly, with the calm of a woman who's lost the fear of drowning, you place the thumb drive with your confession in a velvet box and hide it where no one would dare look. Behind Margaret's urn, the estate is too quiet now. Even the chandeliers seem to chime more softly, as if the house itself has begun tiptoeing around you. You move through it like a phantom, every hallway, every drawer, every secret compartment folded into memory. You've memorized the creaks of the floorboards, the hesitation in the back staircase, the slight give in the second-to-last tile of the veranda. Everything here has a weak point, even Eric. That afternoon, you find yourself standing in front of the pool house again. Not for Cody, not for nostalgia, for strategy, because this is where things start and end. Richard's last laugh, Cody's first lie. Your own shifting mask. You step inside and immediately notice it. The faint smell of cleaning solvent and bleach. Too fresh. Someone's been here. You check the drawer beneath the liquor shelf. Empty. No pills. No receipts. But tucked into the back panel, behind a panel you yourself once pried loose for emergency stashing. You find it, a USB, another one. You slide it into your coat pocket like it's a favor you didn't ask for. Later, in your private study, you plug it in. One folder, labeled, "If you're reading this, I'm dead." Your stomach drops. Cody, the video opens with him seated on the edge of the pool. Late afternoon sun casts shadows over his face. There's a weariness in his eyes you don't recognize, or maybe never wanted to. I don't know how this ends, he begins, but I know how it started. He looks into the camera. I never planned to betray you. Jenna, not really. But somewhere between curiosity and survival, the choice stopped being mine. You pause the video. Fringe tidbit. A famous Southern trial in 2009 involved a woman who kept 20 hours of audio recordings of her husband's infidelity, but none of the recordings were ever used in court. She said she'd made them for history, not revenge. Historians still argue whether confessions made after betrayal can still redeem the betrayer. Right now, you don't care. You're listening for usefulness. You resume the video. Cody continues. I gave Wesley what he asked for, but not everything. I held back your confession. I held back other things. The pills, the footage, because part of me believed you'd pull this off. And if you did, I didn't want to be the reason it fell apart. He laughs. Once. That was dumb. You were always smarter than me. Meaner, too. I admired it. He takes a breath, then lowers his voice. If anything happens to me, it won't be your doing. It'll be Eric's. Your breath catches. Cody goes on. He's been playing both sides. Jenna. He knew about the pills before Richard died. He found one in a drawer. He watched you for weeks, collected data, built a legal case that would paint you as unstable, manipulative, and tragically unfit to handle grief. Your hands clench into fists. You knew Eric was shifting beneath you, but Cody closes the video with something that lands like a slow blade. He doesn't want to leave you. He wants to ruin you, cleanly, publicly, so that when he files for control of the estate, the press paints him as the one who survived a monster. The screen goes black. You sit there for minutes, not blinking, not breathing, just calculating. Mainstream fact. In 2008, the divorce industrial complex became a real term. Wealthy couples weren't just ending marriages, they were using them to consolidate power. Courtroom strategy replaced counseling. Your strategy is different. You don't need a courtroom. You need precision. You go to the cellar and find what you're looking for, an old decanter of Scotch Margaret, once reserved for tragedies. You dust it off, carry it to the kitchen. You pour a glass. You wait. When Eric comes home, you're sitting at the table with 2 glasses and a manila envelope. He raises an eyebrow. What's this? A toast. You say, to what? To the truth. He doesn't sit. You push the envelope across the table. Inside, a printed transcript of Cody's video, a list of Eric's offshore properties, a photo of the false trust documentation with his forged signature from years ago. Eric stares at the envelope for a long time. Then, without opening it, he pours himself a glass. You raise yours. He clinks it without speaking. You both sip, and when the silence falls again, it's no longer heavy. It's understanding. This is no longer a marriage. It's a ceasefire. He finally speaks. What do you want? You tilt your head. Smile. I want peace. And half of everything. He blinks. I also want you to tell Wesley the report was exaggerated. That Cody's statement is invalid. That I've been unfairly targeted. And if I don't, you slide another envelope across the table. This one's heavier. Inside, the real confession. The thumb drive from behind Margaret's urn. Your entire story. Told your way. Signed. Narrated. Sealed. I'll go public. You say quietly, not as a criminal, as a woman who survived power games she didn't start but finished. He doesn't open it. He doesn't have to, because he knows you've already won. The morning light touches everything like it's trying to make peace with the past. Even the dust drifting through the library windows seems gentler now, less accusatory. You wake earlier than usual. No alarm, no agenda, just instinct. Downstairs, the house is hushed. The kind of quiet that follows after a storm, when even the walls seem to take a breath. The tension that once pulsed in the floorboards has dulled. Your mask has settled into something else entirely. Not pretense, not innocence, just permanence. Eric is already in the conservatory, reading, or pretending to. You watch him for a moment from the hallway. You remember how clean he looked at the wedding-tailored tux, starched collar, a jawline that suggested he'd never been challenged in his life. And yet, you also remember how Margaret had looked at you that day, like she already knew you'd gut him when the time came. You were never going to be a Harrington. You were going to outlive them. Eric looks up, nods once. Neither of you say anything. It's understood now, like a treaty written in tea leaves and blood. He'll sign the estate paperwork next week. You'll get what you asked for, half of everything. The house will stay in the family. Technically, but you'll retain access. Publicly, you'll take time away from society. Privately, you'll begin the slow, careful dissolution of every thread connecting you to Chilton Hollow. There will be rumors, of course, there always are. Fringe tidbit. In Southern high society, it's said that women don't vanish, they retreat. A euphemism for scandal, shame, or the kind of victory no one dares name out loud. Mainstream fact. A 2009 study on domestic power dynamics showed that when women control the narrative of an unraveling marriage, public sympathy nearly doubles, especially if they speak first. You'll speak first. You already have. The thumb drive has been mailed, not to the press, but to a foundation you've quietly funded in Savannah, a nonprofit that collects female testimonies of systemic manipulation, the kind of stories people skim and dismiss, until yours arrives. A polished case file, a cautionary tale. You titled it, How to Boil a Family Without Getting Burned. You think Margaret would have admired the efficiency. That afternoon, you pour yourself a final cup of tea in the garden. No cyanide this time. Just peppermint. You sit beneath the arbor where Richard once cornered you with questions he didn't live long enough to ask twice. Where Cody once kissed your hand like he was bargaining with the devil. Where Eric once promised forever with a ring that now lives at the bottom of a safe deposit box in Asheville. You think about all of it, all the steps, all the people. You feel nothing. But not in a hollow way. In a clean way. You survived. They didn't. And now you get to rest. For a while, anyway. Because no matter where you go, one thing will always be true. You're not the villain. You're just the last one left standing. So now, as we gently ease ourselves out of this tangle of deception, betrayal, and softly brewed poison, you feel yourself floating in the quiet aftermath. The drama has dimmed. The sharp lines have blurred. The only thing left is silence. Jenna Carter didn't start as a villain. And maybe, depending on how you look at it, she never really became one. She was a woman who saw what she wanted and took it, one sip at a time, one lie at a time, one body at a time. And yet, here you are, lulled by her calm, her logic, her ability to survive the fire without smelling like smoke. You stretch your legs beneath the sheets, breathe deeper. The storm's past now. The questions can wait till morning. Your thoughts slow, your heartbeat. 2. That ceiling fan above you spins just like the one in the Harrington estate. Not ominous now, just rhythmic, lulling. The kind of background hum that keeps you tethered to the present. Forget the pool house. Forget the thumb drives. Forget the peppermint tea. There's nothing left to uncover tonight. Nothing but the gentle hush of a story that's finally come to rest. So go ahead, sink deeper into your pillow. Let your mind wander to softer places. And if you dream of white roses or broken teacups, well, that's just your imagination whispering. Nothing more. Nothing sinister. Just wind in the garden. And a woman who made it out